Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel of Yitzhak Hashem. Today, we will be learning Daf Kufay and Tes Amid Beis. Daf Kufay and Tes Amid Beis, and we are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today two lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch on Kufay and Tes Amid Aleph, Siman Shin Lamed Hey Sif Beis. Our learning should be a schus for Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael Hanesunim Batzara Bashivya Ha'imdim Bein Bayam Ubein Bayabasha Hamakim Yerachem Aleihem V'Yitziam Yitzar L'Rvacha Me'afel L'Oira Mishib L'Geula Hashta Bagala V'Zman Kariv V'Nemar Amen. Our learning should be a schus Refuah Shalema for Esther Fradl Bas Chana, for Yitzchak ben Zion ben Dusha, Rivka Bashir Aleah, Chavadasa Bas Serel, and Yeshua Levi ben Ahuva Malka Chana, and Gila Shifra Bas Ilana Udal. They should all have a Refuah Shalema B'Sar Shar Chayle Yisrael, and we are mispal that B'schus the Liman HaTorah of Klal Yisrael, the Rebbeinu Shalom should watch over every member of Klal Yisrael B'chol Makom Shehem. So here in Siman Shin Lamed Hey, we're continuing to discuss the halachas of what to do if somebody had a valuable cask of wine and it's leaking and he wants to save the wine that's leaking out of the barrel. We begin with Sif Beis, which addresses a case that we already had to touch upon yesterday. Says the Mechaber, in Nishbara Chavis Barosh Gagoy, if somebody was storing a cask of wine on his rooftop, and now the cask broke and the wine is leaking out, he wants to save the wine. Says the Mechaber, Mevi Kli umeniach tachteha. He could bring a keli and he could put it down on the ground. So the barrel that's leaking is up on the roof. The wine is leaking out. It's, I guess, coming over the edge of the roof. He wants to take a barrel, put it down on the ground, and it's going to catch the stream of wine that's coming out of the barrel. He's allowed to do that. Ubilvad, however, there still is a restriction here. What's the restriction? Shalayavi kliacher. He cannot go get multiple kalim. So he can't go get another keli v'yikloit lekabel min akiluach ba'avir. He can't go get another keli so he could position it in midair to go, he'll hold it, I guess, to go catch, not everything comes down in one nice, neat stream. You have wine coming down in a stream that's going to land in the barrel that's down on the ground, but you're also going to have other wine that's spraying this way, spraying that way, so he can't go ahead and get a keli to hold it and start catching wine that comes out to the side, or continues the Mechaber and Kufay and Tes Amid Beis. Oh, wait. Some more words there. So he can't get a kli v'yikloit lekabel min akiluach ba'avir la'acher shiyorad min hagag. He can't go get the keli that he's going to use to catch wine in midair after it runs off the roof. V'loyavi kli acher, and he can't go ahead and get yet another keli v'yitzaref oisai l'roish hagag, which I guess what that means. I'm thinking now that it means a little bit differently than what I thought yesterday. V'yitzaref oisai l'roish Hagag. He wants to get another keli, and somehow he wants to use it to scoop it up from the rooftop itself. So he's using multiple kelim. He's using one keli to catch the stream of wine that he's positioning down on the ground, below the rooftop. He's using another keli to go catch wine in midair. He's using another keli somehow up on top of the roof. This you're not allowed to do. Finishes off the Mechaber this if he says ve'ematzel b'kli echad, but if you're using one keli to go save the wine, matzil afilu kaileit oy mitzaref. The problem over here, says the Mechaber, is not in the action of being kaileit or the action of being mitzaref. The problem over here is that you're using multiple kalim. And that brings us up against the problem that we've had since the beginning of the Siman, which is the fear that if you're going to be using multiple kalim to go save your wine, you're going to end up bringing kalim from Rosh Hashanah, from a Chatzah Mu'ureves, etc., or you might come to fix the barrel. So we don't want you making a whole project out of this. So if you want to use one keli, go ahead, use one keli. Put one keli down on the ground, let it catch the stream of wine. If it seems to make more sense to hold a keli in midair and catch the wine as it runs off the rooftop, gesundheit. It seems to make more sense to use one keli and be mitzaref up on the rooftop, go ahead. As long as you're using one keli, you can do whatever you want. But to use multiple kelim, that is a problem, and that is usher. Says the Mishnah Berurah, back on Kofayin Tesam and Aleph. Maybe kli, the keven chu kli echad. Now, since we're restricting you and you're using one keli, then afilu machzik meya su'udais matzil v'chanal. Remember what we said all the way in the beginning of the Siman. When you use one keli, we don't restrict you as to how much wine you're allowed to save. So if you could position one keli downstairs on the ground and you could let it catch all the wine that's leaking out of the barrel up on the rooftop, gesundheit. Even if there's enough wine over there for 100 sudais, we're not going to restrict you to Mazon Gimel Su'udais, because you're using one keli, so now you're free and clear, catch as much wine as you want. Ice cut and test, Ubovad Shalo Yavi. But we're going to restrict you, we're not going to allow you to get multiple kelim and use the multiple kelim in different ways. Because once you're starting to go chase other kelim, we're afraid you might forget Shabbos, and you'll end up bringing kelim from Rishus Harabim and being over on Hoitzah. Now, the Mishnah Berurah has an interesting discussion here. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'chol zeh mayri b'yoser mishalosh su'udos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, l'chayra, the restrictions that we're talking about over here, where we're going to restrict you to use multiple kelim, is only if you're saving more than Mazon Gimel Su'udos. Aval b'shalosh su'udos, but if all you're saving is Mazon Gimel Su'udos, yakal lahatzil afilu b'kelim harbe, v'afilu liklay to litzaref. If you're saving up to Mazon Gimel Su'udos, so then you could use as many kelim as we want. Go back to Sif Aleph on Kofayin Tesam and Aleph. How did the Mechaber open up the Siman? He said, Chavish Nishbara, when you have a barrel of wine that breaks, Matzilin Mimena Mazon Gimel Su'udos, you're allowed to save enough wine for the 3 Su'udos of Shabbos, Afilu B'kelim Harbe, even if you use 20 kelim. As long as you're saving up to Mazon Gimel Su'udos, we said that that's mutter. So says the Mishnah Berurah in the first opinion that he brings down over here, l'chayra, that should apply over here too. Your barrel broke on the rooftop, you want to save the wine. We're saying that we're going to restrict the amount of kelim you could use. You can't use one keli to catch it in midair, one keli down on the ground, one keli up on the roof. You can't do that. Why? Because we're afraid you're going to start chasing after kelim. You're going to bring kelim from Rishus Harabim. But says the Mishnah Berurah, l'chayra, as long as you stay within the Mazon Gimel Su'udos limit, you should be allowed to use as many kelim as you want. So says the Mishnah Berurah, this restriction that you can't start using multiple kelim, if you're exceeding the Mazon Gimel Su'udos limit. Aval b'shalosh su'udos yakal lahatzil afilu b'kelim harbe v'afilu liklay to litzaref. Ube'emes, and the truth is, says the Mishnah Berurah, b'yoser b'shalosh su'udos, if you try to save more than Mazon Gimel Su'udos, aser lahatzil b'kli acher af b'li kli tavitzirif v'chanal b'sif aleph. If you're trying to save more than Gimel Su'udos of wine, it doesn't matter how you save it. So even if you're not doing kilut and tziruf, even if you want to put multiple kelim down on the ground because the stream is coming off the roof in 3 different locations or 4 different locations, so you're not doing kilut and tziruf, you're only catching the wine using one method. You're catching it as it flows off the roof down on the ground. If you're trying to catch more than Mazon Gimel Su'udos, you're not allowed to do that, because you're not allowed to save more than Mazon Gimel Su'udos unless you're using only one keli. So Ella, the Urcha de Milsa Nakat. So why did the Mechaber mention Kilut and Tziruf? In other words, again, do the math. Up to Mazon Gimel Su'udos, you're allowed to save, and up to Mazon Gimel Su'udos, you're allowed to save using as many kelim as you want, right? Using one keli, you could save even Mazon Meya Su'udos, right? If you're trying to save more than Mazon Gimel Su'udos, then you're not allowed to use multiple kelim, even if you're not doing kilut and tziruf. So why on earth does the Mechaber mention Kilut and Tziruf? Kilut and Tziruf not negate anything. So says the Mishnah Berurah, according to this opinion, Orcha demilsa nakat. The Mechaber was just giving the typical scenario of why the person with the barrel up on the rooftop would start chasing after multiple kalim. Why? Because he needs to save the wine using multiple methods. That's why he's chasing up after multiple kalim. T'chein derech lahatzel b'kilut v'tziruf. Kein kasa b'sefer Tosefes Shabbos. However, u'b'sefer Pri Megadim, the Pri Megadim has a different take. U'b'sefer Pri Megadim mitzadid lahachmir b'klita v'tziruf afilu ad mazon gimel sudais. Pri Megadim has a different take on this. The Pri Megadim says that even if you're only saving mazon gimel sudais, which in Sif Aleph we said, up to mazon gimel sudais you could use as many kalim as you want, says the Pri Megadim not in the scenario of Sif Beis. In the scenario of Sif Beis, where you start wanting to do kilot and tziruf, no. Then you can't do that, even if you stay within the Mazon Gimel Sudas limit. Despite the fact that in Sif Aleph we said, if you stay under the Mazon Gimel Sudas limit, you could use as many kalim as you'd like. That's only true if you're putting them down on the ground. If you're putting the kalim down on the ground, yes. As long as you stay within Mazon Gimel Sudais, you're welcome to use as many kalim as you want. Aval al yidei klita v'tziruf, but if you're using klita and tziruf, also b'chol gavni kolshu yoisem kliyechad, once you're using more than one keli, it becomes aser. Why? Well, some of the things that I've seen have been that once you're starting to save the wine using different methods, and now, oh, I see wine coming over there. I see wine coming over there. I'll hold a keli and I'll catch it in midair. I'll put one up on the roof. Once you're being Isaac in different methods of saving the wine, it makes it worse. Now we're more afraid that you're becoming very, very, very focused on. You're becoming hyper focused on saving the wine. You might forget Shabbos, and you might come to bring kalim from Rishus Harabim. Cotton Yud says to Mishnah Berurah, but remember, if you're saving the wine using only one keli, then then you could save even more than 3 sudais. Because since we restrict you to one keli, or we restrict you to mazon gimel sudais if you're using multiple kalim, but over here, since you're using one keli, Zachar Hushu Shabbos. You realize these halachas. You're going to remember that it's Shabbos, and we're not afraid you're going to start bringing things from the Rishus Harabim. Okay, we have another simple sif here, and then we get to sif dalid, which is going to be a little complex. Says the Mechaber Sif Gimel, second line down, Kufayin Tesam Beis. All right, so you're saving the wine from your leaking wine barrel. Nizdamnu loy archim. Okay, so your barrel is leaking. We said that you could put one keli down on the ground and start saving the wine, but you can't start doing klita and siruf. Nizdamnu loy archim. But now guests came, and now since guests came, you need more wine. Maybe kliyachad v'koilet, kliyacher v'yitzaref. Then you could go ahead and you could do klita, you could do tziruf, because now you have orchim and you need to save more wine for the orchim. But don't think that what you could do is, oh, the wine is leaking. Putting one barrel down on the ground to catch it is not enough. I want to be koilet. I want to be mitzaref. Oh, but I'm not allowed to. Oh, but if I invite guests, I am allowed to. So I'll be koilet, I'll be tzaref, and then I'll invite guests when I'm all finished. No, that you're not allowed to do. You're only allowed to do it, you're only allowed to be koilet and be tzaref if you have a need, because you already invited guests. But to go invite the guests post facto, that you're not allowed to do. Also, you can't go ahead and say, oh, the Mechaber says that if I have guests, I'm allowed to do klita and tzrifa. So you know what? Hey, neighbor, you already ate your Shabbos Suda. Yeah, I'm inviting you. That's harama that you're not allowed to do. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cutting Yud Aleph. The Rambam disagrees with this, and he would hold that this is mutter. Now we have an interesting Ramah here. Says the Ramah, Hago. Umihu. Im avar va'asa. What does that mean? You were over and you did what you weren't allowed to do. What did you do? Shakolat. You got caught up in saving your wine. You were koilit, you were tzairif. You used multiple kalim to go save the wine. And then you realized, hey, I wasn't allowed to do this. Oh, but wait, I remember Sif Gimel, that if I have guests, I'm allowed to do it. So I wasn't allowed to do what I did. But now I'll go ahead and I'll invite guests to make it kosher. So this is a little bit different than the case of the Mechaber. The Mechaber's case was, the Mechaber said, if you have orchim, so you have a need, you could do klita, tzrifa, no problem. But, said the Mechaber, don't do it and then invite guests. But that wasn't over va'isa. What that was, I know that I'm not allowed to do it unless I have guests. But my thought process is, I'll do it and then I'll invite guests. The Mechaber said that you're not allowed to do. It has to be that you already invited the guests. Now says the Ramah differently. Now says the Ramah, avar va'asa. You went ahead and you were over on the halacha. And you went ahead and you did klita and you did tzrifa. Now you want to make it kosher. By going ahead and inviting guests, says the Ramah, im avar va'asa shekolat v'achkat zimem orchim mutter. B'di'eved, says the Ramah, it is mutter. Now, the Mishnah Berurah is going to make a diak over here. The Mishnah Berurah is going to be medayik. The Ramah says, when is it mutter b'di'eved? If you went ahead and you invited guests. But what if you didn't invite guests? What if you are avar va'asa? You went ahead and you did klita, you did tzrifa, you used 10 different kalim to catch the wine here, catch the wine there, and now you don't invite guests. And now later in the afternoon you want to have a drink of wine. Is that wine mutter or is it asa on Shabbos? The Ramah says, if then you invited guests, it's mutter. But what if you didn't invite guests? What's the halacha then? So take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting your base. V'achak zimen archim. Mashma, the clear implication of the Ramah is, de'im loy zimen, if post facto you did not invite archim, after yevet aser, the wine would remain aser. V'hainu rak on Motzei Shabbos miyad, first points out the Mishnah Berurah, yes, it would be aser on Shabbos, but Motzei Shabbos, it would be mutter miyad, and you do not have to wait ad b'chtei sheyaseh. You don't have to wait for the amount of time after the Zman, how long it would have taken you to do that act of saving the wine with the multiple kalim. No, it's mutter immediately after the Zman. But what if you were over on this halacha, b'shoigig, sheshagag badin? You forgot the halacha. You learned the Dirshu, you chazir the Dirshu, but you forgot the halacha. You thought that you were allowed to save the wine. So you were a shoigeg b'halacha. You were shoigeg badin. Or you taka somehow forgot that it was Shabbos. You were thinking that it was Sunday. You got caught up in what you were doing. You forgot it was Shabbos. So now you were over on an Issa D'Rabbanan b'shoigeg. There's a Gzera D'Rabbanan that said that you weren't allowed to do what you did. You went in and you were over on that Issa D'Rabbanan. But you were over on the Issa D'Rabbanan b'shoigeg. What's the status now of the wine? Are you allowed to use the wine on Shabbos? Says the Mishnah Berurah, yes. Mutter lehanais mizeh af b'Shabbos. You're allowed to use that wine on Shabbos. Afilu loy. Even the owner of the wine himself and the one who was over on Yisra D'Rabbanan himself. The choshkein la'acherim. Certainly others, who are not over on Yisra D'Rabbanan, and they want to drink of wine. Certainly for them it's mutter. And the rule over here is, and we learned this really in Siman Shin Yud Ches in Sif Aleph and Abir Halacha, that when you're over on an Isser D'Rabbanan on Shabbos b'shoigeg, the fruits of that act are mutter even on Shabbos itself. Okay, now we go to Sif Daled. Sif Daled is interesting. Sif Daled is one of those seifim where we really need to pull together a lot of information from different places that we already covered in Hilchos Shabbos. So the scenario over here is, says the Mechaber, Im Yozuv Tirosh Migigish Shalanovim Sha'adayin Loy Nidrichu. You have a barrel or a cask or a vat of grapes, and they're grapes that have not yet been crushed. So you picked grapes, you plan on crushing them for wine, but they haven't been crushed yet. So you have a vat, and you have whole grapes sitting in the vat. Now, sometimes the grapes will ooze juice. Okay, so you have Yozuv Tirosh Begigish Shaladavim Shadayin Nidrichu. You have this vat of grapes, and it is oozing grape juice. And the grape juice is leaking out of the vat. So now again, we have a case of a leaking vat or a leaking cask, but it's a little bit different. It's not a cask of wine that's leaking. It's a cask of uncrushed grapes, and there's juice oozing out of the grapes, and the grapes are oozing out of the cask or out of the vat. Shenimtza oisei adelef einoi roi. Now that juice is muktzah. It's not roi for Shabbos use. It's muktzah. Why? Shaharei hamashkin shezavu asurim. Because we learned earlier, in Shin Chaf, that if you have peiros that are waiting to be squeezed, and juice oozes out of them, that juice is muktzah on Shabbos. Why? It's gzeira. We're afraid that if we let you use that juice, you might come and you might say, hey, this is really good grape juice. Let me squeeze the grapes. And you might be over on the Yisra Schita. So the status of this juice is that this juice is muktzah. Now, let's pause here for a second. So we already have covered this halacha very, very thoroughly. When you have a leaking cask, we restrict how much you're allowed to save, right? So we have a leaking cask, you have restrictions. What are you allowed to save? What are you not allowed to save? What do we say? If the cask is broken and it's leaking copiously, it's nishbara, it's broken and it's mamish flowing out. So then we're afraid that you're bohol. We're afraid you're going to be panicked to save your wine. And therefore we restrict you on what you're allowed to save. And we say that you're allowed to save mazon gimel su'udais. Why mazon gimel su'udais? Because you're allowed to save what you need for Shabbos. So let's do the math. You have a cask. It has grapes in it. There's juice leaking out. You want to save it. So let's apply the rules. If it's leaking copiously, save up to mazon gimel su'udais. But over here you have a new problem. Over here your problem is that the juice is muktzah. So right away, how are you going to save the juice? The juice is muktzah. Okay, so let's get around the muktzah problem. How are you going to get around the muktzah problem? You'll take a cask and you'll put a cask down so that the juice that flows out will flow into the cask and you'll catch it without being over on muktzah. In other words, you're not going to touch it. Again, you have a vat. It's oozing, there's grapes in the vat. It's oozing grape juice. The grape juice is flowing out of the vat because the vat is broken. You want to catch it. You can't be metaltal at biyadayim because it's muktzah, right? Gzeir shemi yischait. So you can't drink that juice. That juice has no Shabbos usage. Therefore, that juice is muktzah. So the juice is muktzah. Okay, so you'll say, I'll save it, but I'll save it without impinging upon the Yisr of muktzah. How will I do that? I'll take another barrel, I'll put it down underneath, and I'll let the juice that's flowing out of the vat flow into the barrel. Well, you have another problem. You know what the problem is? The problem is that, hold it, if we're talking about a gigish nishbara, if this is a vat that is broken and is leaking heavily, so then we're afraid that you're bohol. Since we're afraid that you're bohol, we slap restrictions on you. What are the restrictions? You're only allowed to save up to mazon gimel su'udais. What's pshat in mazon gimel su'udais? We give you a heter to save what you need for Shabbos. But over here, none of this juice is usable for Shabbos because it's muktzah. Even if you're not being metaltal, even if when you're catching it, you're not being metaltal it, you can't drink it, so it's not usable for Shabbos. So again, if we do the math, what we arrive at is, if this gigas, if this vat that has the grapes, that's leaking grape juice, if it's broken so that the grape juice is flowing out quickly, then you're bohol, you're panicked because you want to save it. Since you're bohol, we're going to put a restriction on you. The restriction is that you can only save what you need for Shabbos, but over here, none of this is usable on Shabbos. So once we put a restriction on you, that restriction is going to equal that you can't save anything. So therefore, the Mishnah Berurah is going to come along, and the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, we're not talking about a case where the gigas, the vat, is broken. We're going to rely on the Ramah from Sif Aleph, and we're going to say it must be that the case over here is that the vat is not nishbara. It's not broken, and it's not leaking copiously. It's only cracked, and it's leaking tip-tip. You have grape juice is dripping out slowly. Since the grape juice is dripping out slowly, the Ramah told us at Sif Aleph, you're not bohol, you're not panicked, because it's not flowing out that you're going to lose everything. It's going drip, drip, so you're not bohol. Once you're not bohol, we don't restrict you. Oh, so now there's no restrictions. Now, really, you should be allowed to save whatever you want to save. You could save even Mozen Meyasudos, because you're not panicked, and we're not afraid that you're going to go bring Kalim from Rosh Hashanah. We're not afraid that you're going to get your repair kit and you're going to repair the vat. We don't have any of those concerns, because you're not bohol. Okay, so now let's back up a second, and let's do the math again. So you've got your vat, it's full of grapes, it's oozing grape juice, but it's only going tip-tip, so you're not bohol. Since you're not bohol, we don't have to have a gzeira. We're not afraid you're going to get kalim from Rosh Hashanah. We're not afraid you're going to repair the cask. So you should be allowed to save whatever you want to save. But you have to be careful because of muktzah. You can't be metaltal the juice. Okay, so go get a big barrel, put a big barrel underneath it, and let all of the grape juice go drip out into the barrel. Right? L'chayra, that should be okay. Says the Mechaber, no, it's not. You still have yet another problem that's generated by the Isra of Muktzah. What's the problem? Says the Mechaber, Ve'enoi rashoy losum kli tachtov. You can't put a keli underneath to catch the drippings. You know why? Because like we've said, the drippings are Muktzah. Now the Muktzah drippings are going to go into the barrel. Uh-oh. Now you have Muktzah grape juice dripping down into a keli. And it's grape juice that you don't want to throw out. You want to keep that grape juice. You want to save that grape juice. Now, it's muktzah. You can't be metaltal it. So you know what the problem is? Shemevatloi mehechanoi. Now you're being mevatel kli mehechanoi. Now you're making this barrel muktzah. The barrel that you put underneath to catch the drippings, you're making it muktzah. How are you making it muktzah? You're allowing it to catch the muktzah drippings. The muktzah drippings are going to go into the barrel. Now, pashtus, according to the Mishnah Berurah, the bunch of Mishnah Berurahs that we learned previously, the barrel does not become a basis l'davar aser. That's not the problem here. The barrel is not going to be considered a basis l'davar aser unless the muktzah grape juice was in it already by Ben Hashmashas, and it wasn't. The muktzah grape juice is dripping into it on Shabbos. So the problem isn't basis l'davar aser. The problem is a little bit of a different problem. The problem is that the muktzah grape juice is dripping in. Now, if you want to use the barrel now, what would you have to do? If you have a keli that contains muktzah in it, and the keli is not a basis, because the muktzah went into the keli on Shabbos. So the keli is not a basis, but it has muktzah in it. And now you want to use the keli. What do you have to do? You have to shake the muktzah off it. But you can't shake the muktzah off it. You know why? Because you're not prepared to spill it out. The whole reason you put the barrel over there is because you want to save the drippings. So you're not prepared to pour it out. So now you can't move the keli. You're restricted to moving the keli. Because the only way you can move the keli is if you can immediately shake the muktzah off. But you can't shake the muktzah off because you want the barrel to contain the muktzah. So now you're being mavatal kli mehechanoi. You're taking a keli that was 100% usable on Shabbos, and now you're putting it into a position where it becomes restricted from use on Shabbos. That's bittul kli mehechanoi. We learned already the machlokes rishonim what the problem with bittul kli mehechanoi is. Is it because you're destroying the keli? Because you're putting it into a position where it has no use? Is it a problem of boineh? Because it's as if you're building it into its current position? Because you're affixing it in its position? Because you're not allowed to move it? Is it because you're changing the status from mutter to aser? We had this machlokes rishonim, but whatever it is, the Mechaber says, you got a problem. You can't just put the keli underneath it and allow it to catch the drippings, because then you're being mavatal kli mehechanoi, because you have no heter to go ahead and move the keli. But the Mechaber comes up with an eitzah. Says the Mechaber, Ketzad yaseh, what should you do? Very cute. Yaniach sham mitasai oishulchanoi. The first thing that you should do is, you should go bring your easy chair from the living room where you want to be mavis sedra, or you should bring your dining room table where you want to eat a suda, or you should bring your bed where you want to take a Shabbos nap, and you should bring it to where the grape juice is leaking. Yaniach sham mitasei al shulchanai. Oh, what does that help? Va'oz yeh oisei adelef lefanav graf sharei. Now the leak is something that's repulsive. A graf sharei literally is a chamber pot. We learned earlier the halach of a chamber pot that somebody used as the facilities, even though l'chayr it's muktzah, since it's repulsive because of kavod abrius, you're allowed to go ahead and you're allowed to move it. What you're going to do over here is the delef, the grape juice that's leaking out, is creating a repulsive situation. But a repulsive situation that's happening in a room where you don't have to be, you're not allowed to do anything about on Shabbos. So what do? You create the problem. You go bring your dining room table over there. You don't want to eat your Shabbos Suda where this grape juice is getting all over the floor. So you're creating a graf sharei. Okay. Now that the drippings constitute a graf sharei, yuchal haniach sham kli lekabel adelef kedei shelo yiyaseh sham tit. Now you're allowed to go ahead and put a keli over there to catch the drippings mitam graf sharei. Because if you don't put a keli there, if it's an earthen floor, it's gonna create mud. If it's not an earthen floor, it's going to make puddles of grape juice all over the floor. So now, in order to avoid a repulsive situation, now you're allowed to put a keli there. And when the keli gets full, you have to be able to empty it. Otherwise, it's going to overflow. So now you have a heter to empty it, also because of graf sharei. Question is, how are you going to empty it? Lo yizrkenu b'kli acher. You can't go pour it over into yet another keli, because then that second keli you're going to be mevatel kli meichanoi. Why? Because you're going to have no heter to empty the second keli, because odds are that the second keli is not going to overflow. How much drippings are we talking about already? So that second keli, or really third keli, you want a heter to move. So you can't pour the drippings into it because you'll be mevatel that kli meichanoi. What should you do? Ella rather, merikoi b'soich hagigis shazavu amashkin mimeno shehimevu telas meichana yidei mashkin shababi shamashkin shazavu. You have the vat that has the grapes, that has the grape juice that's muktzah, that's oozing into it. You have keli number 2 that's catching the drippings. When keli number 2 is full, you have a heter to move it and empty it because it's a graf sharei. You don't want to pour it over into another keli because then you're going to be mevatel that third keli meichanoi. So what should you do? Pour it back into keli number 1. There's no problem of pouring it into keli number 1 of bittul kli meichanoi. Keli number 1 is already mevutel because it already has muktzah grape juice in it. So just pour it back into keli number 1 and then put it back and let it catch the drippings again. And it'll be a galgal achayzer for the rest of Shabbos. That's the eitzah, says the mechaber. Very interesting sif. There's a lot more that could be said about this sif, but like we do what we do, we're trying to walk a tightrope and make it as simple as we can. Now we see a lot of what I spoke out here in the Mishnah Berurah, says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Yud Gimel. Im Yosef Tirosh Begiyas. So first of all, like I spoke out, says the Chavetz Chaim, and the Aruch HaShulchan writes this as well. Umayri sha'agigis lo nistak legamri. We have to be talking about that the vat that's holding the grapes is not nishbara. It's not broken so that it's leaking grape juice copiously. Ela ovid tip tip. It's only dripping. Shadayin einay bohol, and therefore you're not bohol. You're not panicked. Ukedalael b'hagal, like the Ramah spoke out in Sif Aleph. Ulekach, and therefore, iloi mishum bittul kli meichanoi. If not for the issue of bittul kli meichanoi, hayamutar lahasim kli tachtav lahatzil. You would be allowed to put, if it's only tip tip, so there's no gzera because you're not bowl, then l'chayra you should have been allowed to put a keli underneath it and let it catch all the drippings. Din nishbar al-gamri, if we're talking about that, mamish busted, afilu hayumut levat kli meichanoi gam keni also lasim kli tachtav the bowl. If we're talking about that the vat was nishbara, so then you're bohol, then you're not allowed to save anything, not even Muslim Gimel Sudais. Why? Because none of this grape juice is usable on Shabbos because it's muktzah. So if it's nishbara, you're not allowed to save anything. Forget muktzah. Forget bittul kli meichanoi. You're not allowed to save anything if the gigis is nishbara. Elamai, we're talking about that the gigis is not nishbara. It's only tip-tip. Oh, if it's only tip-tip, so then if we do the math of Siman Shin Lamed Hey, l'chayra, you should be allowed to put a keli under it and save as much wine as you want. You're not infringing upon muktzah. You're not being metaltal the grape juice. There's no restrictions of a gzeira that we're afraid you're going to bring kelim from Rishus Harabim, or you're going to repair the barrel because you're not bohol. So then that's why the Mechaber says, what is the problem? Bittul kli mechanoi. Now, in Eiskot Yadalad, the Mishnah Berurah makes a point. The Mechaber made a point of saying that what's in this gigis, anovim shelo yidruchu, grapes that were not yet crushed. Why does he have to say that? Why doesn't he just say you have a vat and it has grapes and it's oozing grape juice? Why does it have to be grapes that were not crushed? Oh, says the Mishnah Berurah, you have to chazer chel gimel. Shadayin lo nidruchu, di nidruchu, because if the grapes were already pressed, lo haya mashke shedoylef b'chla mashke chezavu, uchedel el b'simin shinchav sif beis. If the grapes are already crushed, then the juice that oozes out of them on Shabbos is not muktzah. Because what we learned is like this. If the grapes are not crushed, so then any juice that oozes out is muktzah. Why? Because we're afraid you'll taste it, you'll like it, you'll go and you'll crush the grapes. Crushing those grapes would be an issa daraisa of schita. But if the grapes are already crushed, then any juice that oozes out of them, there's no room for gzeira. What's the gzeira? You might crush them further, they're already nischat. It wouldn't be an issa daraisa. So there wouldn't be gzeira, and therefore the grape juice would not be muktzah. Oiskan tezvav, ve'ena rashoi, this grape juice is not usable on Shabbos. Mipnei shemavatli kli mehechanoi. Ayin B'Darkei Moshe, take a look at the words of the Ramah on the Torah in the Darkei Moshe. Shehiskim lasis oid eitza acheres. The Darkei Moshe gives another way out of this scenario. The Hainu sheyiten akli imayim tachas adelef. The Ramah in the Darkei Moshe has what seems to be a simpler eitza. You want to put down a keli to catch the drippings. The problem is bittul kli mehechanoi. When the drippings that are muktzah go into the barrel, you're being mavatal kli mehechanoi. Says the Ramah, don't put in an empty barrel. Put down a barrel with water in it. How does that help? Kadeshi is batalagayin b'mayim rishon. Put a barrel down that has a quarter of water in it. Now, when a drop of muktzah grape juice falls into the quart of water that's in the barrel, it's bottle. And then when the next drip comes in, it's also bottle. Each drip is going to be bottle, and therefore the liquid is not going to be muktzah, and the barrel is not going to become muktzah. And you don't have a problem with bittul kli mechanoi. Because of Magen Avram, shafilun nisraba isel b'sayv shein yoser me'amayim, even if at the end you're going to have 10 gallons of grape juice against a quart of water, it's still not going to be a problem. Diyesh lisbay chalamakilim b'yeridea siman kof lamadalis if gimel ayin sham. Oiskan tezayin v'yuchal anir sham keli v'avagav de b'sayv siman shin lamadches kasav dasal l'chatchila kli tachas telav te'ein oisi graf sharei l'chatchila hachasharim shum sedik k'may shakasav siman shin chesiv lamadzayin. What the Mishnah Berurah just said over here is the Mechaber in his Eitzah is leaning on the heter of graf sharei. But we learned in Shin Ches that ein oisin graf sharei l'chatchila. You're not allowed to go create a graf shalrei situation and then rely on the heter to be metaltal a graf shalrei. But that's exactly what the Mechaber is suggesting here. The Mechaber is suggesting here the creation of a graf shalrei l'chatchila. So how is that mutter? Explains to Mishnah Berurah that we learned in Shin Ches that b'makom pseida, where you're trying to do this to avoid a loss, you are allowed to create a graf sharei situation lechatchila. Finally, we come to the final sif of this siman, and really to close out this whole topic of saving things on Shabbos and the restrictions that apply. Sif hey. Nispazru loy peiros b'chotzer echad heina ve'echad heina. Somebody brought a basket of fruits out to the yard, and they got spilled out, and now you've got apples spread out all over the chotzer. So you want to take a barrel, and you want to go out to the chotzer, and you want to collect the apples. You know, pick up an apple from here, an apple from there, an apple from there, and you want to collect them back into the basket. Now, we're not talking about a problem here of carrying. There's no hitzah issue here. Could be this is in your own backyard. But a barrel of 20 apples got spilled out, and they got spread over a large area. And now you want to walk around collecting apples into the barrel, into the basket. Says the Mechaber, this is also. Nispazru loy peris b'chotzer echad heina ve'echad heina, one here, one there. Says the Mechaber, what could you do? Malaket ma'at ma'at va'oichel. You could pick up an apple from here, make a very pre-eitz, take a bite. You could pick up an apple from over there and take another bite. So that what you're doing is derech achila. But you cannot go ahead and load them up into a box or into a basket. What's the problem over here? Uvdin dechayil. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah and Heina. When you're walking around outside in a yard and you're collecting payrois off the ground, that looks like weekday activity. Right? You have apples, apple trees, and the apples fall off the trees. You go ahead and you pick up your apples. This is not Shabbos appropriate activity. This looks like weekday activity. But if they fell all in one place, now you're not going and collecting your fruits. Something spilled out in one place, you're allowed to pick it up. Let's go weiter in the Mechaber. If they fell in one location, you could pick them up and even put them in a basket. Unless you don't have a grassy backyard, you have dirt and gravel and pebbles. So now the payros got mixed into the dirt, then you got a problem. Then you can't pick them up. Then even if they fell into one area, you can't pick them up and load them into the basket. You have to pick up and eat from each one, and you can't put them into a basket. Continues the Mishnah Berurah over here, nice cut in Yud Zayin. If it's a situation where you have to pick the fruits out of dirt and gravel, then it always looks like uvda dechayil. Why? Because now it looks like the malacha of Berurah. Because what are you doing? You're picking up payros, you're selecting the payros out of the dirt. So now it looks like Berurah. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to explain, even though it may not really be Berurah. Because let's think about it. You're taking oichel mitoch psoilus, you're doing it biyad, you're doing it with your hand, and if you're going to take a bite right away, you're doing it miyad. You're doing it right away to eat it. So it's pashtus not Berurah, but it looks like Berurah. Since it looks like Berurah, it's uvdin dechayil. Even if it's miyad, because you're going to eat it right away. If you don't want to eat it right away, a taka would be a problem with Berurah. You have to eat. It's not only into a barrel or into a basket you're not allowed to put them, you're not allowed to put it into your lap. When he says a barrel or a basket, it's only urcha de milsa. Okay, that brings us to the end of Siman Shin Lamed Hey. We're going to break over here. We'll continue next time with Siman Shin Lamed Vav. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. This list of Limud HaTorah should be making against Klal Yisrael. Rabban Shem should send Yeshua, Sefuris, Parnas, and Shidduchim to all those in need. We should be zeichet to see the Biaskel Tzedek. B'mher v'yameinu amen. Be well.